Reality-breaking ringtone. Written and narrated by Mountain Eyes of Mountain Eyes Narrations, and story originally posted under the name Phantasmal Poppy. This story takes place a couple of years before I moved to the Midwest. A former classmate of mine was then a manager at a local grocery store, and she let me know about an opening they had. It was a tough job due to the small, often temporary staff, and having to run not only a kitchen, but hot food bar, salad case, and deli, but I got used to it quickly enough. With few exceptions, the people who worked in the store were fairly nice. Since the break room was nearby, I would see most of them at some point during the day. One of the constant visitors was a guy whom we'll call Travis. Travis was one of the few geeks in the store and a pretty easygoing guy all around. He also had a prankster streak, which was one of the reasons why we got along so well. Since most of my geeky friends no longer lived in the area by that point, I was pretty happy to have someone local to talk to about anime and games on the occasions that I actually ran into him. So of course, I happened to tell all of this to my then best friend, whom we'll call Tabitha. For a couple of years, Tabitha was one of the few people I could turn to talk to when things got rough, and vice versa. So of course I had to tell her about my new friend. It was during this conversation that the subject of certain toxic relatives of ours came up, as it often did. Very toxic relatives, that we would eventually wind up having little contact with, if not cutting ties entirely. As an act of rebellion, if you can classify our geeky form of catharsis during our early 20s as such, one of us had come up with a brilliant idea of putting the theme songs of video game bosses as their ringtones. Mine? One-Winged Angel. That's right. I put Sephiroth's theme as a toxic relative's ringtone. It's the little things in life that help you get by in a difficult time, you know? Thankfully, neither one of our relatives would have understood the geeky jives and would have thought that we had just put loud music as the ringtones because they were important enough that they needed to be heard immediately. Tabitha immediately made her ringtone swap, but I hadn't yet. I couldn't find the file to download with my old phone, and with me saving my phone data to watch Let's Plays when I felt rough, I had to wait until I could go to the library to use their Wi-Fi. This meant that the song was not yet on my old flip-top when this story takes place. This is important. I know this may seem childish, but trust me, we needed this little act of rebellion. It was a symbolic jibe at some very toxic people, including one whom I was trying to extricate myself from this relative's life before it was too late. Just something personal and a tiny bit therapeutic. Yeah, I know our family members had issues and weren't exactly demons. Highly toxic, at times incredibly charming, but still humans. My exact words to Tabitha were along the lines of, I know she's not Satan or anything, but heck girl, you know what she's like. I really should have seen the foreshadowing, to be honest. Fast forward a couple of weeks. I was working in the kitchen with my then supervisor and another coworker whom we'll call Anne. Anne and I were about to make a few batches of cornbread muffins when I heard music playing. I stopped laughing at whatever we were joking about and listened for a few moments before I realized what was playing. Sure enough, it was One-Winged Angel. For a moment, I thought maybe I was just getting tired and mishearing the store radio. I mean, it was getting closer to Halloween, so maybe I was hearing some other song with synthesized violins playing. Surely that had to be it, right? Nope. The song kept getting louder and louder. I then saw my supervisor and Anne looking around, trying to find the source of the noise. Now, Anne's about 20 years older than I am, and the only things game-related she knew about were vague references from her son and grandchild. As for my supervisor, she might play Pokemon on a dull day, but that was pretty much it. I asked if it was either of their phones, just in case. Nope again. And then looked at me and asked, "Is that your phone?" My hand flew to my thigh and felt the telltale bulge of my flip phone in my pocket. For a moment, I figured that maybe I'd just left the volume on by accident. Then I realized there was one little problem with that theory. I had never gotten around to actually downloading the song. There was no way anyone else could have known about my idea to implement that ringtone. When I talked to Tabitha about it, I was alone in a house I was renting from a cousin. Tabitha only knew one person at my job, and even if my friend wanted to play a prank on me, there was no way our mutual friend could have gotten a hold of a phone that had been in my pocket all day. The moment that dawned on me, I pretty much lost my grip on reality. Now, I've been in some scary situations before, and I've had quite a few close calls. Neither do I fear a lot of paranormal stuff. However, when I was young, I kind of felt this relative of mine had some sort of supernatural ability, and that scared me. When in her mobile home, picture frames would tilt, and I could feel the atmosphere inside the trailer shift before she even came home in a bad mood. I realized later that, maybe she didn't realize this stuff was happening, let alone dream that she may be the one causing it. I never found out. She seemed to always be able to tell when I was scared too, though I attribute that to being too young to know how to hide my expressions properly. I felt like she honestly could read my mind, to where, for a few years when I was little, I actually watched my thoughts around her. Of course, I had known that wasn't the case for a long time, but in the moment that I heard the ringtone go off that was supposed to be my first real jibe at her, that childhood fear came rushing back to my mind and I just lost it. Oh my god, she really is Satan. My mind started reeling with theories that started getting more and more convoluted and nonsensical as fear overtook me. Was she not actually disturbed, but truly evil? Was this a warning from the future that danger was coming? Did I break the space-time continuum or something? Like I said, nonsensical. The whole time, I'm blindly trying to jam my hand into my pocket and failing because, hey, I'm still wearing an apron. So, for about 40 seconds, I'm stuffing my apron deeper and deeper into my pocket and losing any chance I had at gaining purchase on my phone. Then, I started to see black spots. That's right, I was about to pass out. Right as the darkness started creeping in and my vision began to blur, I turned around in a wild attempt to try to tell my boss that bad crap was about to go down, and I happened to catch sight of something small and gray on the windowsill of the interior window that looked out onto the delicacies and hot bar from the kitchen. Was that a Game Boy? I thought. No. Not a Game Boy, but a phone case that looked just like a small console. That was when the memory of Travis stopping by to leave his phone on charge with us, since someone had already taken over the outlet at the break table, came back to me. In an instant, the black spots started to disperse, and I just started shrieking with relieved laughter. I turned and laid my head on one of the tables and tried to steady myself so I wouldn't completely collapse onto the floor. Meanwhile, my supervisor and Ann were trying to comprehend how I could go from bouncing around and laughing to stock still and pale as death to screeching like a banshee in the span of about a minute and a half. Apparently, I was so loud that they could hear me up front, so the head manager came back to see who had died. Instead, he just finds my silly self slumped over the table with my coworkers standing around me completely baffled. After squeaking out an "I'm fine," the manager just shook his head and told me to keep it down once he realized that nobody was bleeding or about to leave work in a hurry due to a death in the family. Eventually, I managed to catch my breath and told Anne and my supervisor what had happened without going into too many details. The unfortunate part for Travis is that he had played the best prank on me without even realizing what he had done, so he couldn't actually say that he played that as a prank later on. Too bad for him and his prankster record.